Hey friends, welcome to the Call to Farms podcast. I'm your host, Tim Ing, the homesteading agent, joined by my lovely wife, Sophie.
Hey friends, it's Sophie with Sprinkle with Soil.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be next to you.
Well, today we have a very special episode. We're going to be talking about how to build community. This is one of the talks that I did at the Modern Homesteading Conference a couple of weeks ago, but I'm glad that you're here because you were instrumental in building community and would love to have your insights and have you share that with our audience.
Well, I don't know if I was instrumental because you are one to help keep up with it, but I think I naturally, in our relationship, I lean more towards the extroverted side slightly. When I tested in the Myers-Briggs, I was right at the cusp of 5 on E for extrovert and I for introvert. So I think you were like way introvert.
I'm way more introvert. So it does, to get our different outlooks and perspectives on how we approach building community is going to be interesting because oftentimes if you're working with a partner, one of you may be more introverted than the other. So
do you actually, on that note, do you know what your personality trait is? Like I'm ENTJ.
I thought I think I was INSJ, something like that.
Oh, I think we talked about when we were dating. I think we were like the complete opposite.
Okay. Well, we should probably take that test again.
You're like ISF.
I don't know.
Okay. P.
Okay. Whatever that is. Private. Okay. So let's go ahead without further ado. If you're watching on YouTube or watching on Spotify, that would be best so you can see the slide deck. But if not, and you're listening and tuning in while you're doing your gardening or on your way to work, we'll go through. Essentially, we're going to be talking about why community is important. So if you're looking to homestead, why community should be at the top of your list and how you can go about building community, especially if you're like an introvert like myself.
Finding and building community, right?
That's key.
I think, yeah. But if you can't find any, then it is on you. Onus is on you to build it. But this all spurred because last night we hosted a home buying webinar. It's our Home Buying 101 webinar that we host at least a quarter, if not every other month at this pace. But one of the questions that kept popping up was, how did you find and build community? How do you find and build community when you know nobody there?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the talk that you gave during your Q&A session, there were so many people that asked about, well, so what am I supposed to do? Just pick up the phone and call someone and they're not going to trust me. So I think that after hearing all of these questions, I think it's good to just go through your talk, but also add some of the flavors of like all the questions that we've heard and help answer them, but help also inspire you. Even if you haven't moved and you're looking to find community, or maybe you've moved somewhere and you still can't find community, because we also heard that perspective too. People have moved to a homestead and they just can't find a community and didn't realize that. Well, we were one of those, although we were in California, and I think it was next to impossible to find the types of personalities and values, shared values that we have.
Yeah, and bottom line up front, that's something that I learned in the military. So what we're going to be talking about is that spoiler alert, you can't just build community or find community overnight. It does take time to build trust and to become ingrained in the community. We're going to be talking all about that. But we also want to just emphasize how important it is to seek the right community, because nobody wants to do it twice. Nobody wants to do it multiple times. You want to try to get it down the very first time, and it's very hard. Where do you even begin? Like, where do you start? And we're going to answer these questions in this episode.
You say bottom
line up front.
Bottom line up front.
BLUF. Yeah.
I say TLDR. Too long, didn't read.
Oh, yes. So if you're tuning in and you're checking out the slide deck that we have, the very first page we have here is our milk fridge. And it's beautiful because we see all these half-gallon jars of milk. And to most people, they'll say, okay, that's just a bunch of milk. But to us, that's freedom, that's trust, that's more importantly, insurance. That's what it represents for us.
And I don't know if you can see some of our community members' names on there, but we're pretty rogue. a lot of this we trade with our folks here. So we have somebody that we trade a lot of our veggie starts with. We trade a gallon of our milk for a pint of raw unfiltered honey.
Mm-hmm.
And he lives right down the street from us, so we know it's super close and beneficial for us.
Great for allergies.
Great for allergies. Mm-hmm. We trade for our cream. Mm-hmm. We trade our lots of hay. Mm-hmm. For several different folks. Our butter, which is not listed, not shown here, but our raw butter, as well as our Vietnamese yogurt and our milk, are out to our colleagues, our friends that have access to all this hay. And one of the things about why that's so important and why we prefer trading over cash or any monetary value is because during a time like now where we are in the 5th worst drought in the last 100 years in this region, every farmer, every homesteader right now is hoarding all of their non-sprayed hay, actually all of their hay, regardless of whether you're sprayed or not. And so the fact that we have the ability to secure our hay during a time when most people are having a really hard time finding it is because we've developed these relationships over the last 4, almost 5 years directly with our local neighbors and other farmers who have access to the things that we need, and we give them access to the things that they want but can't find anywhere. Like we cannot find raw gold butter right now.
Yeah, and in the state of Tennessee, the dairy products, especially raw milk, is for pet consumption only. So that is what we trade for. And what I want to touch on is that when you move from the city to the country, there is a slight, if not significant, distrust, of people coming into a new area. And what we found in Tennessee, and I'm sure this is the case in many other small towns in America here, is that you'll have families owning large plots of land. And they want to make sure that they take care of their own first, meaning they take care of their family members and close friends that they've grown up with. So they save the hay to share with them. Or if they have extra land to lease on, we have friends who came from out of area as well, and they are looking for hundreds of acres to run their cattle on. And it's still difficult today to find land to lease on because you have to become ingrained with the community. You have to build trust. It takes many years.
Oh, I want to just say something that may be controversial, but yes, that family of ours, you would say that they look the part. They look the part of the Appalachian folks here. Right. They have the East Tennessee beard, which Tim did try to grow.
Maybe I can get a Fu Manchu. I don't know. I can't do it. Just like in the karate movies.
But we had several people come up to us and ask us specifically, how do people take to you? How do you fit into the local community?
Yeah.
And I thought that was like, it took me aback for a little bit because I think that I never felt this way before. Growing up in the Bay Area, traveling and splitting our time in California. I was just back in California after our trip. I flew from Idaho to California while Tim flew back to Tennessee with the kids.
On our last
episode, you could see I was back in California. And I really felt kind of at home there. And I only say that because I fit in with the physical description of most of the people in the Bay Area, which is now very highly predominantly Asian American.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons when we moved out to kind of the Walnut Creek area, it got a little bit more diverse. But now, like, if you're in the San Jose area, you are now the majority. If you're Asian American, you are kind of the majority now.
And now we're in an area where we don't look like most people here. I joke that we're like in a witness protection program or something, but I joke about it. But our values are in alignment where I get this question from people of different ethnicities. When I was just at the conference, we were just at the conference a couple of weeks ago, and had a Latino American ask me, like, how do you feel? Do you feel out of place where you're at in East Tennessee? And I said, well, No, actually not. I mean, if I stop to think about it, we may not look like, I may not have that beard or, but
Or our skin color, which I think
skin
is
color,
like,
right?
I don't know if I would agree with you 100% there, because though yes, we align with very many in our community, if not all of our community here with our values, the truth of the matter is, like, my first hesitation is our skin color. Like, it is apparent here
Hmm.
where we are primarily surrounded by a lot of Caucasian, and we are typically the only Asians in anywhere we go, including some of the conferences, sans the tech conferences,
Right.
but other conferences around food and farming, we are typically the Asian homesteaders. And that's one of the reasons why, like, when we see other Asians, other even color, not even just Asians, but anything other than Caucasian, it's something that we really want to embrace. In fact, when I went to college, I
Mhm.
had the very same similar experience. We went to Independence High School in San Jose,
Yeah.
which is very minority, kind of blacklisted from many colleges.
Yeah.
We made it out okay, but then I went over to George Washington University, where there were a lot of international, lots of well off boarding school students from all over the world. It's an international school and got the best of the best. And I really felt like, oh, my skin color is something that I'm starting to feel it. And so that is why in my second year at GW, I started the Vietnamese Student Association, which is still alive and well today.
Yeah.
But that's where I was able to gather the other Vietnamese. There weren't very many of us, but maybe 20 around campus during a time when the other Vietnamese people that I was able to find were at other Asian organizations. So yes, though we're Asian, we're still mixed, but they were split between the Chinese Student Association, PCS, which is the Filipino Cultural Society, all mixed around. And so that's when I came in and said, you know what, we really do need to stand on our own, because the number of Vietnamese students, although sounds very little, we had a majority of them,
Mhm.
but no one had stuck their neck out there and put together an organization. So I do want to say that, and maybe you feel it less because you're second generation Asian American and I'm first generation Asian American.
Mm.
So I always had my parents where I was very still connected to my tradition and my culture, but coming out to an area that, like, there's not even any good Asian food. There's not really a good Vietnamese restaurant. There's not for sure a good Chinese restaurant. There's nowhere for us to gather. We really do have to lean into the values that we have to share with those around us here. So it is a challenge. I want to be completely honest about that. But when we hear people ask us, well, how do you think that they'll take to us? I have to pause and think about it. I'm like, we are typically the ones that, have a harder time with fitting in an area where we don't look or maybe even speak like anybody else. In fact, one time we visited Polyface Farms during our tour
Mhm.
of where we should go,
Yeah.
and ran into somebody, and somebody, as they were talking to me, they were saying, "Oh, you sound like a news reporter." And I never heard that comment before. And I think it's just the West Coast accent, or the accent that we have, that is not familiar with maybe the Southern accent. So, like, we don't physically fit in, but it doesn't mean that we don't fit in with our values. And thankfully, that is something that, after, I feel like post 2020, that is something that we all tend to gather with that same like-mindedness of values, because during 2020, so many of us were divided by where we stood on our health freedom, food freedom, our medical choices, and choices in the military. That we drew a very hard line in the sand. And because of that, like, we lost a lot of our friends who looked like us, right, physically, and gained a ton more of those that may not have looked physically like us, but shared the same values. And I don't know how to say that simply when someone comes up to us and asks us that question
Okay.
in a matter of like 30 seconds when they've just met us. So I wanted to put that out there,
Well,
to just be real about it.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I didn't want to make this about a race thing, and we're not making it about a race thing. I think I know that at the end of the day, like, we evaluate people that we come in contact with based on their values and where they're coming from, and we want to hear their stories, and we want to just base them on their merits. But it is important to talk about this because oftentimes it gets glanced over. And I do want to add, because you mentioned about GW, I want to add really quickly too about going to West Point. And I so badly wanted to get out of San Jose, where there were more, predominantly Asian.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see the rest of the US. I wanted to see the rest of the world, right? Join the military. And
I think both of us were the responsible runaways, where
Right.
we like loved and appreciated where we came from, but we also wanted to break from all of that because we didn't completely identify with all of the Asians, but we also didn't identify physically with the rest of society. And so, like, being Asian American and then first and second generation, there's a lot of the cultural aspects that come into play.
There's still a great appreciation. We talk about first generation and second generation. I still have a really great appreciation for like where my family came from and the heritage. But as a minority coming in, there's always the pressure of assimilating and while you're assimilating, meaning, take in. So as a second generation, I wasn't pressured to learn Mandarin or Cantonese or, play the piano and things that a typical traditional Chinese American would learn how to do. And
because your parents wanted you to assimilate.
Yes, my father wanted me to make sure that I did really well in English and to practice public speaking because he said English is the future. Well, now in hindsight, 2020 hindsight, being in real estate, if I could speak Mandarin, I would do even more, I would be doing more business but I didn't know that back at the time. And I didn't want to make it about that. I want to say that the point I want to make is that going to West Point, I purposefully tried not to make friends with the Asians. I wanted to make more friends with all the Caucasians, with the Americans, because I viewed myself that way. But then coming back 20 years later at the reunion this past November, I realized that I should have made better friendships with those Asian Americans because I would have probably had a tighter relationship with them, because as much as I viewed myself as being Caucasian, at the end of the day, I didn't look like everyone else. And so when I came back to the reunion, they don't view me the same way either. And not only that, but value wise, and this is what was captured in a previous podcast, I had nothing to talk to them about. We shared no common beliefs or values anymore. Many of them are getting pinned on many of my classmates that are getting pinned on to be full-bird colonels and now trying to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Whereas now I know exactly what I want to do. Why do I have to wait until I retire at this special age? Why can't I live that right now and grow my own food? So we say all this because it is something that is important as we build community, as we look for community. We oftentimes, as human beings, we gravitate towards communities that have people that look like one of us, right? That's why we had, like for Chinese, that's why they had Chinatowns back then too. Like you put everybody in the same place, and they may say that's discriminatory, but that's also, we would self-select ourselves to want to be around those that look like us. And so
it's not just Asians though, like the different religious and nationalities do, right? Like there's the JCC that we used to be a part of,
right.
Jewish Community Center.
We did, yeah.
And then there's like the Muslim areas, and I think it's beautiful because
it is.
It's just that much easier for us to at least have that starting ground
to
begin a conversation with. But we have so many friends that are Muslims, and we have so many friends that are Christians, and we have so many friends that are Jewish. Like, I think that where we came from in San Jose, it was a really nice mixing pot. So like we never really felt that the discrepancies at all with our skin and our color, because we had access and still have access to so many different types of different thoughts, whether
Yeah.
it's politics or whether it's religious or any fundamental things. We've kind of had a little bit of everything, which kind of makes us, you always say this, like chameleons, right?
We do.
We do, because we kind of, having that background and having that history and growing up in that melting pot really gave us the ability to have empathy for different types of people. And I think that's a unique perspective in our life, in our business, and in teaching the children how accepting we can be. And the only times where, we need to think about threat are when our freedoms are being encroached upon.
Okay, so that was a slightly longer intro than we planned, but it was very necessary because this is not your standard building community talk. And we're trying something new today by actually showing a slide deck as well. But we wanted to at least give you that background information so that you know where we're coming from and the perspectives that we have, because we may have a little bit of different and unique perspective.
I'll just add one more note, because you said that when you were a child growing up in your home, you were encouraged to speak English to assimilate.
Yes.
And that's, again, Tim's second generation Asian American, which means that his dad was born in America.
Yes.
And your grandfather was the first one to have immigrated and fought in World War II on the U.S. side. For my family, I was the first one born in America. My parents were the ones that had immigrated to the country. In our household, I got in trouble. My sister and I got in trouble for speaking English at home. And we got in, by trouble, I mean, like, we were disciplined, right? And I couldn't even say that we were Asian American growing up. I had to say that we were Asian. And so, like, the tie to our culture, and I don't know if that's with like being first generation Asian American, or if that is just growing up in my household, but I had a very strict, very traditional household where we were against assimilation. And of course, I clearly assimilated, but still am able to honor our family and our culture and our traditions.
Yeah, so this may apply to you as well. If you're out there and your family is immigrated to the United States, that's the beauty of America, in itself. It's built on immigrants.
You might be fifth or sixth generation.
Sure, but I think a little bit of our story hopefully will apply to where you came from. And so as we share our thoughts today about why community is important and how to build community from scratch, we hope that there are a few nuggets here that you can take away from it. So without further ado, we're going to be talking a little bit about our cold start, because we came from California. We're city slickers. Hard to admit that. And we grew up in San Jose, California, where everything is just, on the app, everything, instantaneous gratification. And we also then, because of 2020, we felt that our world was ending, that we had a greater appreciation. We were already starting to garden beforehand in 2017, but we ramped up more so in 2020. And so we purchased 6 acres in Northern California. I empathize with my clients when they cannot leave the state that they're living in right now because of familial obligations or friends or church friends, like years and years, decades even, of building up, or maybe their businesses that they've spent decades building. And we had a very full-fledged real estate business focused on helping veterans use their VA loans. And we were just winning and just doing really good things, standing up for vets in the area. Well, 6 acres in California to now we're moving across country to Tennessee on 5 acres, because we didn't want to bite off more than we can chew and apply everything that we learned from California to Tennessee. Where do we even begin? I'm the introvert. She's a little bit more extroverted, not fully, but more extroverted. And where do you even begin? So why don't you talk a little bit about how did you even begin with that research?
Yeah. Well, again, it went back to values-based. We're talking 2020. So I want you to go back to that time when talks of COVID were starting to enter the country in Washington and then creep down to California and then slowly spread everywhere. It was during that time that I started looking into, wait, if this is truly happening, then where are the people that might have different perspectives on what we're being told? And at that time, like, we believed in all the things, like we were looking forward to listening to Fauci and what his recommendations were. But we already had a hard stance on vaccinations. And because of that, from when the kids were much younger, we knew that if they were going to introduce vaccinations with COVID, that there had to be another perspective that we weren't hearing. And so I went and searched for that, but it was really hard to find. I think at that time we were talking about like the misinformation dozen, right? CNN had posted then on the 12 doctors at the time, and I think it was actually 13 when you actually counted it. There were 13 doctors that they said not to listen to. So of course I started looking into those 13 and doing research on what they were saying. So thank you for that list. And then started looking into, okay, well, besides just the health aspect, what about our food aspect, right? Because we had already cleaned up our food, and I wanted to understand who else cared about regenerative farming. That was not something that we personally ever thought that we were going to get into farming. We at that point started our backyard urban garden on a 1/4 acre, and we knew about organic premises or organic practices, but we just didn't think that we were going to do it a larger scale or be doing it more on a basis where we would be stocking up our own pantry. And so because of that, I started looking into preppers and started looking into people who were talking about how much food we needed to grow. Because again, coming from California, all the grocery stores had shut down, restaurants had shut down. And so I thought, well, that's a great challenge. How do we start then generating our own sustainable access to protein? And what does that look like? To the point of like even financial freedom. What does that mean? Is there an alternate form of currency that we need to look into at some point? If it's not food, if it's not finances, then what is it? And, we started looking into like the fiat system so like all of these questions, as you go down through each rabbit hole, there are so many different groups. At the time, I was very active in Telegram groups because due to community standards on Facebook and Instagram, a lot of the people that I was following, they were getting banned. Even our local chiropractor, for goodness sakes, like you couldn't say anything at all, which Telegram at that time had a great reputation that they weren't going to back down on any of the pressures because they were not a US based company. I think they're based in Ukraine. I could be wrong, but I know it was definitely not in the US. And so they weren't beholden to any of the nonsense community standards that we're beholden to in big tech.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those were some of the groups. And then as you start asking questions, you start establishing these online, I'd say, relationships with people, and start saying, okay, well, there was a great community out in the Ozarks. There's another great person out in Oklahoma, another in Tennessee. So like we talked to everybody in Texas, all of these different little, I guess, leaders in the towns that they were in. And of course, you have to know how to speak the language. You can't just like message people and just, hey, can I give you a call and then blurb everything out. It's relationship building, right? And it's kind of the best way if you're an introvert to do it online, because you can kind of do a lot of the vetting outside of having to go and meet the person in person.
Yeah, I'm going to share this as well because I laugh when I think back. There was this California family that contacted me when they came out to East Tennessee. And before they contacted me when they got to East Tennessee, they said, by the way, Tim, we're out here. Can you meet with us? And I said, and I did. I met them for coffee. And they said, Well, we just spent a week in Middle Tennessee. We couldn't find homesteaders and we couldn't find homeschoolers at all. I said, where were you? And they said, well, we were like in Columbia. I said, well, you're almost right there in the heart of it. I mean, we have friends
So
who,
many friends.
lots of friends who do that right there. And they said, well, we didn't know where to look. We went to churches. We were looking at their, what are you looking at? Like the postings at church? Like nobody's going to be like waving their hand or flag on like, come here and talk with me. You got to know where to look. And so I'm glad that you touched on that. You have to be tenacious as to keep going down the rabbit hole and looking and not, and even if you find obstacles in your way, you have to go past it. Keep asking the questions. It may not be the first person, but it may be the second, third, fourth person that you end up talking to, where it was like that in our case too, where we were able to find the leaders, quote unquote leaders, but like people who know more people in that area, in the
Right.
community, right? Not necessarily like a self-proclaimed leader, but like a leader a person who can get you in touch with other people. Like if that person, and we are like that today, where we have clients that ask us like, where can we get, meat? Where can we get grass-fed beef? And so we have context because of the time we spent in the community, but not only the time spent, but the time contributing with other members in the community.
Right. And I do also want to throw out there, because this was one of the questions too, and I did answer this in person, but a great resource for you to go check out is go to Wise Traditions or westonaprice.com or .org. And you can then take a look at the chapter leaders. And this is just a beginning. This is just a suggested resource where you could go and have conversations with people in certain areas that have lists to people who are farming or who care about food and farming, if that's something that is important to you, right? And typically, most of the people who are really skeptical of what's going on, they're going to be more rogue. They're more skeptical of people who come into the community. So it's something to be mindful of when you're talking to people. Like, we don't list anything of ours because we don't really sell mass produce to that many people in the community. We couldn't sustain that way. But it does take time and relationship building. And sometimes it does require you to be in location, because when we first moved here, our mentors that we were able to stop by and have a conversation at their home, they're not listed on anywhere. They're not on social media, but they've been doing this and living this lifestyle for over 20 years and can run circles around many of the quote unquote influencers that you can find on YouTube or Instagram.
So the bottom line is you need to actually make the visit, do the recon, go out, make it a vacation, actually come out and tour the areas first, speak to the locals, go to the local coffee shops, actually have conversations with those who've lived in the area and it's part of their regular routine to come to the morning coffee shops, ask them the questions, get the gossip, figure out what's going on in the town, get the lay of the land, and see if that's the right vibe. I mean, like, not vibe, but if you get the right feeling that these are your people, the way that what they believe in, what their values are. So what I have here on the slide is the deal breaker checklist, which I'm going to share at the end here. So stay tuned for the rest of this podcast. But
or
the deal breaker
on the link below, or you can scroll down on the link below.
But the deal breaker checklist is a compilation of what working with hundreds of clients, and many of my clients have checklists, spreadsheets, and putting it all together to where I give this checklist out to my clients now, because it does save a lot of time and energy of trying to go through what is important. What is the goal at the end of this is to identify with you, your partners, to figure out what is important in the community that you're looking to move into. And then afterwards, there is so much you can do online. I'm not dismissing what you can do online, but nothing beats actually physically visiting the local towns and communities. And as we mentioned, like, it does start with a conversation. So for me, being introverted, it does mean I need to get out of my comfort zone. There's no shortcut or a quick way around it. I have to open up my mouth and say, "Hi, how are you? What's your name? What do you do? Why do you love living here?" And asking and learning to ask thoughtful questions that get to the heart of the matter more than how's the weather and surface level questions. But let's just stop wasting time and let's just get to the heart of the matter, because we don't want to waste any more time. And it's been years. And for many clients that I've worked with, they say they wish they made the move yesterday, if not years ago. So if you're in that boat, then you want to be able to have your questions already formulated in your mind of what's going to get to the heart of the matter and ask those questions. I have clients that come and meet me, and sometimes they ask me questions that are like, well, you had just this 1 hour or 45 minutes to meet with us, and that was a question you asked. Like, you have to be very thoughtful about and intentional with questions that you're going to be asking that's going to be moving the needle as to helping you make your decision.
Well, oftentimes we also feel like our role is a part marriage counselor. That is what I'm actually have been formally trained in. So it's I think we have a unique perspective of asking people good questions, but that also does not discount the fact that you should talk to your partner if you do have a partner, to see what their goals are and getting on that page. That's why that deal breaker checklist is so crucial. That's been years in the making of not just for us, but working with so many clients out there who have very similar questions and concerns. So definitely check out that deal breaker checklist at the bottom of this podcast episode.
Yeah, and we're not saying you have to have a partner. It's easier if you have a partner to do it with. If you're doing it alone, or if you're a widow, like, you could certainly do it alone. But that is why, whether you're alone or you have a partner, it's so much more important to be building community. And this is something that we had to learn coming from the city and thinking that we had to buy everything on our own, do everything on our own, and not ask for any help. The mindset is shifted moving out into the country, where we're learning that our neighbors and our community members actually want to help. They want you to ask them to help, and they also want you to reciprocate, of course. But just changing the way that we think is something that was actually more difficult for me, being introverted, maybe being a man, maybe being coming from the Asian culture as well. But it's something that I'm learning to exercise, that muscle, learning to be able to ask for help, and not only that, but offering to help.
Yeah. I think us offering help comes naturally, but us asking for help, I think especially you, still find that a little bit challenging, because you always say, like, I don't want to feel like I owe somebody something, or I don't want to feel like a burden.
Yeah.
But there is one really good friend of ours, Danny and Patrick, Danny's my best friend from, I think, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And her partner, Patrick, he's the one person that I've been able to witness him pull that out of you, where you're actually like, okay, well, let's work on this next project, because normally you shy away from asking for help. So those relationships are good. And so, yeah.
Yeah, we've done more projects together now. We've even had some Instagram reels that went viral because of it, but only because I felt comfortable asking him for help, because he's just like a buddy, and I don't feel like this expectation or feel, anyways. You have to find your own groove and be comfortable asking for help, and that's important. Now, coming from the military and just pulling on strengths, this is one thing that I want to talk about, is that whether you're doing it alone, you're doing it with partners, you're doing it with family members, in terms of making this big move, you need to assess yourself, do a self-assessment, and figure out what your strengths are. And my strengths is in logistics. And so the slide says send the ADVON, and ADVON is a military term. When we were deploying, like when we deployed to Iraq, our army, we sent an ADVON party out. That's the advanced party that does the scouting out, finding, where to land all the equipment, where to set up, the tents and everything. And then the main party comes afterwards. Now, when we set up our move from California to Tennessee, like a military operation. And I sent Sophie and her children out as part of the Advon party, whereas I was in the back. I was the main party, getting the home ready for sale, getting all things tidied up. And so that's how we delegated and or delineated like the responsibilities that each of us had. So Sophie went out first, and that's good because she's a little bit more extroverted. She was able to strike up conversations at the local co-op hardware store, and she actually met. We were talking about our cattle rancher friends. Like she literally stopped them in front of the road.
Well, I didn't know they were cattle rancher
Not at the
friends.
time, we
Like,
didn't
no,
know.
not at all. He had a license plate that was very unique, and I don't know. It was one of those Jesus take the wheel moments, and my hands just pulled him over, and he was all flustered and was like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And my first question was, "Hey, do you live here or are you visiting a friend?" And he says, yeah, no, I live down the road all the way at the end. And I said, okay, well, do you fellowship with people here? Like, or do you have one? And can I come over?
So
I didn't know how much time I had with him
Yep.
because I didn't see what he had behind. But later on, he told me that he was on his way to get a bunch of hay that day, long trailer bed. I did not see any of it. I don't remember any of it. I just remember thinking this person must share the same values and beliefs as we do.
But just being a bold witness and having that courage to be able to stop somebody. And if I were there with her, I would have said, no, don't stop somebody. That's weird. And so it was meant to be that way, where she was the advance party. And that was her role, is to set up the new house, start forming and building and finding out more information about the surrounding community. So that way, by the time I came, I was able to just add to it, be able to meet the people that she formed relationships and friendships with, and then be able to kind of build upon that. So that's how we were able to divide and conquer. But at the end of the day, we have the same goal as to, okay, we want to make this our place. And many of my clients say, like, Tim, I only want to make one more move. This is it. Sure, nobody wants to make a temporary move. We never get into purchasing property or getting into a new place thinking, I'm just going to be here for a little bit, unless you're in the military, right? We always want to try to put, there's a lot of time, a lot of resources that's put into figuring out where to go. And so that's why identifying community should be at the top of your list.
Yeah. And I also want to mention those people are now some of our best friends in the area ever, and their entire family. And then to go back to another example of ours, which is Maggie. We've talked about Maggie and John before. We've had them on our podcast, where I had been driving by their property, saw the lanes for what I assumed was rotational grazing, and then basically turned into their home and flagged them down and said, hi, basically we should be friends. And those two core relationships, after now almost 5 years, are the same relationships we have on a daily basis, where we do game nights, we do our church groups, we share our milking and our chicken processing, basically our all of our farming needs in there.
Yeah, so it's really important to be able to not be afraid to be a bold witness, to be meeting new people. And so by doing that, we've been able to learn a lot of new things from John and Maggie. We learned how to take care of Jersey cows, dairy cows. And that's something that we didn't even plan on doing. But by saying yes to the right opportunities and by volunteering our services to help her when she was sick and undergoing cancer treatment, that we were able to learn over a course of a year and a half on how to take care of those cows. And today, sadly, she wasn't able to win that fight, that we are still working with her husband, John. And together, we have this really great relationship where we take care of one another and we take care of our cows together. And with our other friends, we're learning how to fence. We're learning how to take care of cattle and ranching. So your story may be a little bit different. We're sharing what we did and when we came here. And this slide that I'm showing right now is a speed date dinner that we did. And because what I was talking about earlier, we're operating as if we don't have much time because we wish we had done this, years ago, or we wish we did this months ago. And formulating your questions and just being thoughtful and intentional with the time that other people are giving you, that's key. And when we came here to East Tennessee, we spoke with some of the group leaders and were able to meet others who are transplants who just relocated to the area within 2 or 3 years prior to us from all over the US. And we wanted to pick their brains and find out why they moved here and why they stay here. And these were questions we made sure that we made best use of their time. I also got to interview the local sheriff. We got to interview, we were very fortunate at that time that the local congresswoman happened to be in town too, doing like a fireside chat, and we're able to ask questions and on her values and beliefs as well. So making the best use and just planning out your trips are key.
Right. And I want to also caveat, I have not since then stopped anybody else, pulled them over, and I've also not pulled over into anybody's else's house.
Driveways.
I wouldn't recommend that anywhere you go, but I think it was just one of those God moments where
divine intervention.
It just God just took the wheel, and I just did it. And I don't have any other words to explain it, and I tell the children not to do that. But it was meant to be at that perfect time, and for us to still have incredible relationships, because from those relationships, we've even grown our community almost 20x because of these, what they were, core leaders of their own groups.
Yeah, we had a question that was brought up a couple of weeks ago at the conference that we were at, and they asked, so do you feel like, or how long did it take for you to build a community that you're in, to get to a point where you feel like, I really enjoy the community that I have, and it's at a pretty good place right now. We're constantly building, we're constantly maintaining relationships. It's an everyday thing. And I mentioned that it was last winter when this huge ice storm was coming, and it did hit Middle Tennessee pretty bad. And we did get snow, but it wasn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. But the week prior to it and just prepping for it, we didn't necessarily have to prep all that much. We did a lot of work up front, but more so, we knew who we could call. And Sophie was back in California, and we mentioned this on the last episode, but this is all true. She and I can only count on one hand who we would be visiting or wanting to visit back there, who would care to hear about our story, care to learn about us, and then for us to just be able to share what's going on. And yet coming back here, we have more than two hands of people who we can rely on, trust, be able to call on if we needed to, right, in emergency, and whom they can call on us as well, and we can reciprocate it. But just having that alone, that's like having that blanket, right? And of course, we also did, our due diligence. We also stocked up. We had water. We had, all the necessary items. But I remember back in California making those runs to Costco and thinking, as much toilet paper and water and canned goods that I can buy before everyone else can buy it and just hoard it, then that means I'm going to be good and I'm going to be set. But at the end of the day, it was like, well, who else can you call on and help? And that's something that it was like a different form of thinking. Whereas out here, the majority of our thinking is like, okay, we know we're good because we have people that will check on us and whom we're going to be checking on them as well. And that satisfies a lot of the planning, a lot of the prepping.
Yeah. I just listening to you share that story. I remember one of our good friends and lenders in California, for his birthday, he specifically asked for a Costco size case of toilet paper.
Oh yeah.
Because it sold out everywhere and nobody was letting go of their toilet paper. It was so silly. So as good partners in lending and real estate, we gifted him a whole case of toilet paper rolls. And it sounds so silly now, but it was like cost of gold.
No shame in it. Like, we were there, we lived it too. So we totally understand where, many of you may be coming from. And so there is hope.
There is
So,
such
yeah.
a different world, such a different world.
All right. So the key to, okay, you find relationships, you build relationships, but you have to adopt this mentality, if you don't already have it, is to give more than you take. That's key, especially in the country. There's so many opportunities to learn. And I think I've never been busier now. Majority of our community members are retired, and you think retirement is like sedentary, you think they're just golfing. No, not out here in the country. They're forming groups, clubs, and they expect you to show up, and they're teaching classes on canning and like all these survival skills, as well as prepping skills and homesteading skills. And we're contributing as well. Like, I'm teaching about security, homesteading. But in these photos that you see right here, I give 3 different examples as to how we as a family can contribute. And when you come into an area and you have to do a self-assessment on what you can provide, and for us, it's providing nourishing foods.
Yes, I want to caveat on that too, because we also get the question of like, what if we're in an area and we've been here for years and we still haven't found community, or the realization of, oh crap, I didn't realize how important community is, and I don't want to wait too long or wait until it's needed. So these are some things that we wanted to show you, that you can be a leader in your area. When we talked about how, like, you can go find your leader on these Telegram groups, fine and dandy. But I never thought that one day we would be in a position to be a leader in our own right, in our own areas of interest, that we care to give back in. And that's really what it is. When you're a leader, you should be giving back.
Yeah, and I had someone come up to me too, and he lives in Bellevue, Washington, like really in the heart of the city, and he is all about worms. And I'm like, well, you can be a leader in your community to help educate others on the benefits of having your own worm farm.
Vermicomposting.
Right, because if you buy worm castings, they're really expensive. So talk about the benefits, like find your community, find your tribe. And in these 3 photos here, you'll see, I love this very first photo because these are our neighbor or friends. They're like over 6'5", the boys are, and you see our children there. But our children, they're teaching them how to harvest chickens, because they're great on beef and on raising cattle, but they don't know how to harvest chickens. And
they didn't know how to yet.
Not yet. They do now, because through this, through this class that we gave, this workshop we gave. And we do that because that's being part of the community, offering up your services, offering up the skills that you have, and not, dependent on size or whatnot. It doesn't matter. You have the knowledge, be able to share it. The second one shows Sophie teaching a kimchi making class, because that's her bread and butter, about fermented foods in an area that's talking more about canning goods. As Asians, we bring about, well, our heritage wasn't all about canning. It's all about fermentation. We didn't have that luxury back in Asia to have refrigerators and also to can and to have hot boiling water to can these goods. But instead, we had to leave them out. And fermented foods arguably is actually way better, because you get to preserve a lot of the nutrients as well over time.
Not just preserve, but you actually elevate
yes.
the microbiome. And okay, so yes, that was something that I had put together because I thought, well, I wanted to get a group of people who are interested in cooking at home. Again, for us, homesteading starts in the kitchen. And then that is the impetus of the Nourishing Asian Kitchen Cookbook. But that is why we're also coming out with the Nourishing Asian Homestead, is to show you how to take that from kitchen to soil. And we do a lot of fermentation in our Asian culture and our Asian traditions. We just, as economically minded as we are, we really do try to think about, what did our grandparents, what did our ancestors do back in the day? They didn't have access to all these beautiful glass jars with perfectly fitted sealed lids and heat and thermometers that would get them to a certain temperature for how long. So really canning wasn't something that our ancestors really had access to as easily, but what they did have access to, and what I grew up with, was mom taking a rock from the beach, bringing it home, washing it, scrubbing it, boiling it to sanitize, and using that as a fermentation weight. And we would have bowls where she would place all of her vegetables, salt, and then have a plate, a ceramic plate that just sat on top with the weights. And that's how we fermented.
Mhm.
It's just accessible, it's easy, and just something that I grew up with, but that you can fit more too. And it's not just for my background being Vietnamese, but that's how there are fermentation crocks with the Japanese, the Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese. Every single Asian culture has a different way to ferment because that was the way that we were able to preserve food, but also help improve our gut microbiome.
Yeah, speaking of your mom, there she is in the third photo in our game nights that we hold. We host these game nights with clients, with our friends in the community. And
Oh, you can't say clients because
what?
we were only able to invite the clients that we knew were, one, close by, because our
Well,
space was limited
right.
still, and then
Okay.
two, we knew that loved game night. So if
Well,
you are
yeah.
our past client and we're not invited, it was because
Well, we have
it
clients.
was
We have clients all over. I
okay.
was just mentioning this in general. We had clients that were nearby. We have friends in the area. So we like to host game nights. And this one was one of our more recent ones. All the rage is on Mahjong. And so we wanted to learn Mahjong. I hate to admit I didn't know. I'm Chinese. I don't know how to play Mahjong. And you have Americans playing Mahjong all over the internet now. But we wanted to learn how to do it. And this is what we did. We hosted game night, and we also we cooked a lot of really good, nourishing, delicious foods as
Yeah,
well.
I had a Vietnamese noodle bar where we
Mhm.
had vermicelli noodles, our herbs from the garden, our lettuce from the garden, tomatoes, and then our protein. So we had beef, we had chicken, and we had tofu for our vegetarians.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of snacks, but I mean, this is our love language. We also love having a good time, but Mahjong is something that is really fun because it's not just taking off online, it's really taking off for in-person meetings, meetups. A lot of the studies that Mahjong has been able to really bring up is the fact that you're talking about negotiation, numbers, patterns, identifying all of this, and a lot of the psychology. And, when you think about your brain and the neuroplasticity, having and playing Mahjong with different people actually helps improve and prevent you from having dementia. And over the last several years, that's something that has been really core and prime to what research we've been doing. And it's also a fun way to bring our community together. So far, we started with 20 people in our game nights, and now we have climbed to, in this next month, we're going to be up to 50, if not 60 people. And again, that's still not inviting everybody. And that's only because we haven't found a venue big enough to where we don't have to pay so much um, to host basically a fun game night. We are also very cautious because we understand that we are very competitive, though very loving, and like to have a lot of fun. It may bring out some of the competitiveness of everybody else in our community too, which is all fine and dandy so long as we all understand we're here to have fun.
Yeah, and these are just 3 examples. I didn't even show that we're milking as well, so we're providing raw milk as well for pet consumption only, of course. There are many, many other ways that we contribute, and there are many ways that you too can contribute to the community that you're going into. And it doesn't matter, like, based on your age, based on your physical, or based on, like, just mental, like, what your skill sets are. Find what your strengths are and lean into those strengths. Living in the country, nobody cares what your LinkedIn profile says. It's all about what can you provide, what can you do. And you may not know a whole lot at first. We didn't at first. And so we're just open to learning as much as we can. That willingness, that hunger, that appetite to learn, but also willingness to share what we have. And for us, our strengths was in cooking, in providing nourishing foods. And so how do we combine that, make that fun, make that educational as well? Game nights, instructional classes, even work hands-on workshops. They're great ways to bring the community together.
Mhm.
These are what I was just talking about here, and these are some of the bowls that
We
you
did
created.
we did put an event together for
That,
the last couple of years
that's right. We
with
did.
Homesteaders United. They're the founders of that because we really wanted a conference for homesteaders who wanted to learn hands-on. And
Mhm.
it was incredible. We had people come from all over the country. And one of the ways that Mom and I gave back this last time was we were in the kitchen together and we served all of the food that we harvested at the conference in our hands-on training. And we realized, you know what, the other hands-on training aspect of it was actually cooking with us in the kitchen. So more to come on that.
We'll bring that back into Tennessee because these events were in North Carolina before, but we had such a really good showing for it and great feedback because many of the conferences just teach you how to do it and you're just sitting in there listening to a speaker. And this one that what we founded, Homesteaders United, we wanted to make it more hands-on. So great to learn, but I'm more of an active learner. I want to learn with my hands, and that's the best way for me to learn and for many others as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, we would love to hear from you. Please leave some feedback, and we are formulating so that we can offer it next year.
Mhm.
We talked a little bit about this from the very beginning, that what's the purpose of forming community? Yes, it's good to have friends. It's good to be able to lean on one another, but it does take a lot of work, right? Having a relationship takes a lot of work. If you're married or having a partner, like it takes a lot of work. And first identifying who to be in a relationship with, who to be in community with, right? And then maintaining it by offering your services, by offering skill sets, sharing your knowledge, and then finally to commit, meaning showing up. And so if you have meetings, show up to those meetings, host the events that you say you're going to be hosting, teaching these events. And so ultimately, by building trust, that is the best insurance policy you can have when you're living out in the country. Many may say that they want to be left alone and living out in the middle of nowhere, but very few actually really want that. Many people may say, I don't want to have to see my neighbor. But when things go bad, they probably would like their neighbor to check in on them as well. So there needs to be some sort of balance. When you're living out in the country, you still want to be able to have neighbors. You still also want what you want. You want to have a buffer as well. But especially all of us, and we hear you, from living on the zero lot lines in California to now having acres and acres. What does that even look like? How does that even feel? Well, but you need to have community. That is so important because trust, and what Sophie was just talking about earlier, by having butter that we can trade for hay when there's a huge drought, and most people would tend to hoard or hold their hay. I'm using that as an example, as for just like their family and friends, and to be able to build that trust within the community where they're able to share it with you and you didn't really know them that long and you're not from the area. That speaks volumes as to how much time, how much energy, how much you had to share, or how we had to share in the community to be able to build that trust.
And many say, there's a saying that says, many want a village, but very few want to be villagers, right? So like everybody wants to find community, but very few people want to be the ones to help give.
Yeah, and I want to share this story because our hay guy in the area, he offered us some land just down the road. He said, I know a family, they're elderly, they can't take care of their acreage. It's about 10 acres or so of land. Do you want to put your cows on it? Do you want to fix the fencing over there? And I went over there and I took a look and made an assessment, and there was a lot of work that needed to be done. And I went back and I told Sophie, I said, I don't know if it's worth going over there, spending the time, spending the money to actually improve the fencing and going through all that effort just to get this 10 acres. And you said, you know what, you have to say yes. It really wasn't a question hun. Like you said, when you're offered this opportunity, you're like offering this opportunity to shine. You have this opportunity where they're allowing you to essentially lease this land, use this land to take care of it, be a steward of this land. It's like a test, it's like an interview process. If you say yes, then other doors may open and say, and right now I'm going to be selling that property too. But that wasn't the intent. It was, okay, if I can show what I can do on this land, then other parcels of land, they'll speak, speak good things about what I did to their land, how I take care of it, and how I'm a good steward of it, and spread it to their family members, who their family members like own most of the road. Then that will spread like wildfire, and that will give me more opportunities, more land that I can possibly lease in the future. And I didn't think about it that way. And so I'm glad that you mentioned it to me, that if I had said no at that time, because I'm thinking about finances, I'm thinking about the time it's going to take, I would have been too short-sighted to see the long end goal. Because if I had said no, there may not be another opportunity in the future. And that goes back to our friends who are cattle ranchers, who are having a difficult time looking for like another 100 acres, because they don't advertise that online. Even if you speak in person at the local co-op or with other trusted people in the area, they'll say, well, you're in competition with so many others that are looking to lease land for cattle. Who are you? And so when you're given an opportunity, even if it's less than ideal, especially when you're a newcomer coming into the area,
There you go.
this is absolutely your time to shine. It's almost like when you get a phone call from someone, you're always being interviewed. We tell the children all the time, when adults are talking to you, it's an interview. They want to know how did your parents raise you? How are they teaching you? You're being homeschooled, like you're being now compared with other homeschoolers and public schoolers and everyone else, like all other kids your age. How do you respond to them? It is an interview. Life is an interview, right? And so more importantly, when you're in the community, sometimes you may not get, and this is what I wanted to land on, is that sometimes you may not get second chances. So you have to be open, you have to be willing. And sometimes these opportunities don't come at the best moments when you're absolutely ready to go and have all the resources ready and things are ideal and all the stars are aligned. It's the moments when things are really difficult, things are hard, when you're working on your farm and homestead and an opportunity makes itself available, when you have to have the grit to be like, okay, I see the opportunity and I'm going to go ahead and take it.
And you forgot to mention that while you were building out the fencing on that property, you had a neighbor approach you and offer another 20 acres of pasture for you to help manage too.
Yeah,
so
right.
Like it all goes back to like it's a fine line, because we always want to remind ourselves, our family and our children too. You don't want to say yes to everything. But at the same time, when you're entering a new community like this and someone's asking you to take part in their trusted community, you have to say, yes, but, right? Yes, but I can only do this. I can do this type of fencing, something that's lower cost, more economical, quicker for you to do, because I have my fencing I need to do as well. But so, yes, but there's always some negotiation there. And that is how you gain trust in an area. At least that's how we were able to gain trust in the area. Again, it always comes back to giving more than you take. And yes, though that was a good partnership, sadly, after you finished the fencing, only a couple months later, both the husband and wife passed shortly from each other. And so the daughter then reached out to you and said, I saw how you and your children, she saw a video of us working on the fencing. And she said, I saw how hard you and your children worked on the fencing on my parents' property. And though there are other agents that we're friends with, we want to go with you because we saw how you stewarded and cared for the land that my parents owned, right? And that's what it is. It's human. It's just being human.
It's not only that, it's the ability, my network of buyers who reach out to me every day and looking to homestead. They didn't want their homestead that their parents and their multiple generations who lived on that land, that's through blood, sweat, and tears, help to manage that land and steward that land, to just go to someone who's can pay the price, pay the dollar amount, but then not appreciate its full value and not continue to build upon that and homestead it. And through my network, they knew that I would be able to help them find a buyer who was going to do exactly what their parents were doing and building upon it and making the land that much better. So that's what we're finding too, just hearing stories of those who want a homestead, but also hearing the stories of the sellers too. And even the home that we're living in right now, this is so much love and attention was put into this custom home. And sadly, they had to sell because through like medical, through just age, and also primarily to through family members and wanting to relocate closer to grandchildren. There are so many stories out there, and nobody really wants to just sell to a developer. Nobody wants to sell to someone whoever can pay the top dollar. Sure, that's great to make a lot of money on it, but they really want to sell for heart. They really want to sell to people who, yes, can afford it, but who can carry on the mission. And that's something that really spoke to my sellers in this case. I believe, was it a book or it's a saying to say no to good, but say yes to great? And it's really hard when we're all living in this day and age where there's so many things coming at us. How do we discern and figure out, like, okay, everything sounds good, but everything will take up time, energy, right? Money. What items, what tasks, what things can I say yes to that are going to be great for both sides? It's going to take time and discipline. I mentioned from the very beginning, this is not overnight. This is not a really quick. This is not for people who are just buying a bug out spot for an insurance policy land, because when things hit the fan and you move onto that property, nobody's going to trust you at that point. It takes time. It takes discipline. So we're not going to lie. This is exactly what it's going to take showing up. And going over the 4 steps right now of building community, you scout it out to find the members. You connect with them. You're going to find aligned with values, aligned with beliefs. And 3, contribute, be able to provide skills, provide knowledge. And then 4, actually committing to it, showing up, being part of that community. So it doesn't happen overnight. This is a photo of me speaking with local community here, our local county members, on homestead security. And this is something where I was able to bring knowledge from going to West Point and actually serving, deploying overseas, earning a Bronze Star for what I did and having a different perspective from the Army. I wasn't one of those Army infantry rangers who kicked down doors and killed people. Like, those are much needed. But my background was as an Army engineer. So I'm thinking defense first. I'm thinking of how do I fortify defenses? And lo and behold, like, that lends itself well with building a homestead. How do you defend your homestead? Yes, from people you don't want there, but also from predators, animal predators, as well as how do you defend yourself from a natural disaster from coming in? Because that's the most likely threat, is a natural disaster. And I share this. I came up with a SAFE method with it, which is an acronym for situational awareness, access, fortification, and then emergency readiness. And I shared this with the group. I also wrote this book, this FM 5-21 on fortifying your farm. And so in it, I go into more details as to how it can be applied when you're looking for the property, but also if you already have a homestead property, how you can strengthen and bolster its defenses. And I do believe that I provide a different perspective. It's not all about stocking up on guns and ammo, which that is much needed. You need to be proficient in marksmanship. But at the end of the day, I'm not the only one shooting. I only have 2 hands. How many guns do I need? I need also to make sure everyone in the household understands how to use and is not afraid of a firearm. And that's only one aspect of it. There are so many other things I talk about in the book, of organization, of logistics, of how to infuse technology and use technology, because your eyesight can only provide so much information as to what you can see on your land, especially if you have acres upon acres and you have trees and you can't see, there are blind spots, how you can mitigate that using technology. And so that's something that is a passion project of mine. I have that book. I'm also working on another book that will be actually published next year. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be the homesteader's guide to buying land to homestead on. So I'm really excited about that. But here on the slide, this is a book that Sophie and I have been working on. It's going to be published very shortly in October. Really excited. Chelsea Green is publishing it. It's the sequel to the Nourishing Asian Kitchen Cookbook, that award-winning cookbook that Sophie wrote a couple of years ago. And this is the Nourishing Asian Homestead, which is our story, how we were able to ramp up so quickly and draw from our ancestral Asian heritage in terms of the tips, the tactics of how to farm and how to farm naturally too, not using chemical inputs, but how to find microbes in our local area. Like, how do we do it on a really low budget, but also do it naturally and also get great results? And we were able to do it in California, and we were able to replicate that here in Tennessee. And in addition to it, the book also has traditional Chinese medicine. There are also some recipes in there as well that I'm not going to spoil everything there. We want you to be able to pre-order it. You can pre-order it here at sprinklewithsoil.com and get some more information on the book.
Yeah, and importantly, as to stay with the relevancy of this podcast episode, is that we also share about our tactics and strategies on how we built community.
Yeah.
And that will be in the Nourishing Asian Homestead book as well.
This was a quick overrun. This is not everything you need to know about building community, but I also wanted to provide here on this slide, this is how you can stay in touch with us. It's very easy to book some time with either of us. There's my email there at timmingteam@gmail.com. There's also on Instagram. Please follow me at Homesteading Agent and follow Sophie at Sprinkle with Soil. And be sure to watch us on YouTube if you're not already watching us right now at Call the Farms. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this episode and you are thinking about sharing this with your partner, anybody in your family or friend sphere that you're thinking, hey, I want to build community with you, or let's go find and build our community, please feel free to like and share this with everybody that you think would be interested in hearing about our strategies and our recommendations on how to find and build community, especially when you know no one.
Absolutely. We love being here and being able to share our story with you. And hopefully it has helped inspire you to take those next steps. And if we can be of service to you, please reach out. Please share this podcast episode and subscribe, as Sophie mentioned. But we love it. And we love it when you guys come up and say that you've been listening for years. It's really humbling, because we set out to do this to be more of like a diary or a video journal for our children.
A documentary, because we're terrible with actually doing the work and holding a camera and coming up with creative scenes and hooks and all of that for the algorithm. So this is our easiest way to connect with one another, connect with you, and also secretly have a documentary for the children, so they can always take a look back and have this playbook to understand why we made the decisions that we made, leaving the city and answering the call to farms.
Yeah, we've just been real here. So we hope you are doing well. Until then, be healthy. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, friends.
Bye.